We're live streaming on YouTube from Automate, the largest gathering of automation professionals in North America. Been absolutely phenomenal. We're on our day 3, getting toward the end of day 3, actually, and talking to really, really interesting people about advancements in automation, the future of robotics, the future of advanced manufacturing. It's been an absolutely wonderful week. One day to go tomorrow. And we have to mention, by the way, that not only are we at Automate, not only are there 25,000 visitors here, 750 different exhibitors, and probably the most prominent exhibitor, I will tell you. You see their red and yellow logo all over. You see their technology all over this entire facility. Huntington Place is FANUC, and we are in the FANUC Education Pavilion. FANUC obviously having a huge commitment to the world of education. So not only are we at Automate, not only are we sitting here in the FANUC Education Pavilion, but I am joined by the president and CEO of FANUC America, a friend first and a partner in business second, Mike Cicco. And Mike, it's just awesome to have you with us.
Thank you, Matt. Great to be here.
I think you're. I'm not sure. I'm looking over at our producer Melissa Martin. Is this the third time guest that we've had on the podcast? So when we get onto something good, we love to bring that back. And Mike was one of the individuals that helped stand this podcast up 2.5 years ago, one of our very early guests. And I've mentioned to you more than once that the fact that you were willing to do it that first time really brought a tremendous amount of credibility to the work that we're doing. And because of that, we've been able to welcome so many fascinating people onto the stage here at the Tech Ed Podcast, but none of them more interesting than Mike Cicco. So really looking forward to this conversation. And let's start out with this. We're here at Automate. Mike, I mean, I love this show. It's right in your backyard here in Detroit. I joined you for a wonderful reception a couple of nights ago at the Shinola Hotel. That was absolutely incredible. What are you seeing here? What do you love about being at Automate?
Yeah, this is, as you mentioned, this is the largest automation technology show in the marketplace. 750 exhibitors, right. Tons of people. We had huge crowds. One of the best things about this is the way this show is. I like to categorize the shows in general where you have vertical shows that are independent or they're kind of dedicated to a certain industry,
right? A
packaging show, a machine tool show,
sure.
Even now you get into things like poultry and other things.
Exactly.
So there's lots of very dedicated industry-specific shows, vertical shows. This show, because of its nature, it is all automation all the time,
right?
And it's a way for us to really highlight everything that we can do in one big booth. And so we have automotive demonstrations, we have a food demonstration, pharmaceutical demonstration,
right.
We have painting, we have logistics and 3PL stuff. So this is the show where someone says, I need to automate, they can come here and they can find what they're looking for because it's everybody automating all the time, not really industry specific.
Absolutely. And just the quality of the attendees as you're walking around. And part of it is I'm always shocked at how many people I know, right? So not just how many people I know, but how many people I see here that I know from previous roles, from previous projects and so on. So walking around and meeting folks that are working for distribution companies, working for integrators, working for OEMs that are doing all this incredible innovation. So it's just a wide variety of people, and it's everything from CEOs, and we've got lots of engineers, lots of technicians, people integrating the different types of technologies. It really shows the wide range of opportunities and careers available in the world of automation. I got to believe as you're over in the FANUC booth, and that booth, by the way, is gigantic. And I want to get into a little bit about some of the new technologies that you're featuring over there. But are you seeing the same thing? I mean, just this wide variety of not just different industries, but different types of roles that people have in the companies that they're working with.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into how workforce development plays a part in this, but we're really starting to see the efforts that we've put in over the previous few years, much of with your strong dedication and help to workforce development, but it's really catching on. You can really sense that the idea of robotics and automation technology is catching on because we are seeing CEOs come in and saying, we need to do this.
Right.
I've heard it so many times this week of, can FANUC help me enter an automation journey? We need to get on a journey. And I think everyone is recognizing that it is not like an equipment purchase where you just buy this piece of equipment and it solves all your problems, but it is a journey. It's a culture change. And it starts with workforce development because it has to happen at the lowest levels. It has to happen at the highest levels. And so I agree that the people that keep coming into the booth, everyone's looking either already on an automation journey or looking to get on an automation journey, but it's all in the effort of trying to do good business and do better business in manufacturing.
And I think that's a really wise way to look at it. Is this, it really is an automation journey, right? And a lot of times we'll hear people say, "I need to integrate a robot. My competitor bought a robot, or this company I saw has a robot." And yeah, that's an important part of it. But you don't automate for the sake of automation. And it's really about, how do I use automation? How do I use advanced manufacturing technology to solve a problem in my operation? I'm a huge proponent, and have been for a long time, of lean, continuous improvement, Kaizen, that whole approach to identifying opportunities to improve, having wide spectrums of people involved in those conversations, and putting them around a problem and saying, what is going to kill us first? What's our biggest challenge? And then how do we fix that? And to the extent that automation can be part of the solution, now we can go about bringing, whether it's a robot, whether it's a vision system, whether it's some other version of data acquisition, whatever that is, that's really the next step. And now we can say, we start that journey together. We start with a partner like FANUC, that we had Manoj Patel from Ford on with us yesterday. I think I mentioned to you that one of his comments was that he loves working with FANUC because he knows that FANUC will never let him fail.
Yeah.
And so you start that journey, and you have a customer, you have a client, you have a partner, you have a friend who knows that you have their back, who knows that you're never going to let them fail. And that's really what it's all about, is we bring these new technologies to bear in manufacturing. I know you're seeing a lot of cool new technologies. I was in the FANUC booth, both on the education side and on the commercial side, and seeing all the amazing solutions. Are there certain things that you're really promoting and featuring here at Automate this year?
Yeah, there's a couple great things. Thanks for the question, because this particular show, we really want to, it's like a highlight reel. We want to bring the best of the best and the newest of the new. So a couple cool things in our booth. Number one, we have a brand new robot. As the business, you mentioned you have Manoj Patel from Ford in, and a lot of the automotive OEMs are going down a journey into the electric vehicle space right now, Ford included. And with that happening, there's a need for some new technology. And one of the things is not just a high technology like vision or force sensing, but it's a mechanical technology like how much a robot can pick up, and then how that robot moves. And what we found is that as you start to have battery packs and battery trays, so you have a battery cell that goes into a battery pack, that goes into a battery tray, and that makes up the bottom of the car of an EV.
Yeah, like the skateboard they call it.
Yeah, so the skateboard. So once you get to the skateboard, you need to start moving that around. And maybe at first, unfortunately for us, that size hit a gap in our product line where it was a little bit heavier than the 700 kilograms that a robot could pick up. And we have a robot that can pick up 2 tons, 2,000 pounds. Yep. And that was a little too much.
Okay.
And so we saw a need, and we developed a 1,000 kilogram robot, 2,200 pound robot payload. And we also saw the need for that robot to flip over backwards, which is important in the manufacturing process. And we have that on display right now, picking up skateboards, battery pack skateboards, which is cool. So that's kind of a big demo, because the robot's so big and it's moving some big pieces around. But on the high technology side, one of the last areas that hasn't been automated in the automotive industry very much is on the final assembly side. So body shops have been automated, and paint shops have been automated, and powertrain facilities. But final assembly is still a very manual process, still very dangerous for the people in terms of repetitive work and things like that. And so we have developed a vision system that really starts to mimic a person, whereas on a car that's on a moving line, a person's physically using their eyes to see the car and then can adjust their motions based on what their eyes see. And we have a system in there where the robot has a camera on it that is looking at a vehicle as it goes down a line, and it's the hub of the wheel with the hub bolts on it. Wow. And we're actually loading a tire onto that hub as the car's moving, and the hub can be in any position and off in 3 dimensions and stuff like that. So that's a really cool one as well.
Absolutely. And so that robot isn't any longer having to find an XYZ coordinate to put that tire in the same spot every time. And in fact, it sounds like it's not even necessarily going to be in exactly the same spot every single time. So it's got to find that as it's moving in space, orient it the right way so it gets it on the, is it putting it on the lugs? Is that what,
so putting the tire on the lugs,
Yeah, and while it's moving. I mean, that's hard for a person to do, and we've got all these like integrated vision systems and have for generations, and through evolution. And here you've got a robot that you figured out how to do that with a it's got to be a highly advanced camera and then some pretty serious AI going on in the background.
That's
Is that right?
exactly right. Yeah. And it's interesting to be able to tell that story though, because when you look at it with your eyes, you're like, oh, the robot's putting the tire on the car. How hard is that? People
Right.
can do that. But and when we tried to make these storyboards to say, no, this is a really hard manufacturing challenge because the hub can be rotated in any direction.
Right.
It can be pivoted in 3 dimensions in any direction. And then the car on the conveyor can be moving while it's going down the line as well, in more dimensions. And so it's a tough problem, but we solved it, and it's on display over in our booth.
Absolutely. We use the analogy sometimes changing the wheels on the car while it's going on the track, and you have a robot that's actually doing exactly the same thing, and
There
it's
you go.
designed that technology. That to me is incredibly fascinating when you start to think about the combination and the integration of these high-end vision systems, which are now seeing as well, if not better than people, with the artificial intelligence in the background, with the automation solutions. That's really where the future of this is going. Are there other trends that you're seeing, Mike? Or macro trends in the industry as far as technology is concerned, whether it's AI, whether it's machine learning, smart sensing, vision systems. What are some of the other things you have your eye on?
So one of the big things that's happening right now, and this is related to how low the unemployment rate is right now,
Right.
that we're starting to see adoption of automation at all areas of manufacturing at a higher rate than we ever have before.
Sure.
So what I mean by that is we're getting into many, many more small to medium-sized businesses that are looking to automate.
Right.
One side of that coin is a very fortunate one that we have focused so much on education and workforce development that those small to medium-sized businesses are very able to go to many of the schools that you support and find an automation engineer from a school and get on a journey very, very quickly, because all you really need is somebody to come in that knows how to program robots or look at a PLC, and you're off and running. And then our robots are becoming easier and easier to use as well. So they're trained and the robots are easier. And with the adoption of some of the collaborative robots that we have, they're getting into a much more safe space in terms of not needing all the guarding, being a lot more friendly for people to program because you can kind of move them around with your hands. And so all that, we're really penetrating a new market and solving some of the issues that are into the small to medium-sized businesses, because they have just as bad a hard time finding labor as anybody else right now.
Absolutely, and in some cases, maybe even more of a challenge. And I'm just a huge believer that we've had over the course of time a few kind of step changes in manufacturing from a trend standpoint. If you go back to my early days in manufacturing, when everybody was shifting over to ISO systems and you had standardized quality, say what you do what you say. And then we were able to go to large companies as a small business at that point, a relatively small manufacturer in the grand scheme of things, and be able to say, look, we have the system in place that can nearly guarantee perfect quality because we've vetted all of our systems, we've created standard work, and that was a game changer for a lot of small to mid-sized companies when you were able to do that, and then in some ways compete with some of the larger companies and at the same time have the agility of a smaller company. Then we had the whole trend around Kaizen and continuous improvement, and that was a huge step change. And the companies that did that and drove waste out of their systems were now either able to go to market at a lower price when they had to, or they were able to compete, or they were able to reinvest in their businesses when they didn't. And that just totally transformed manufacturing. Now you have, really two trends, I think, and you just hit on both of them. The first one is the whole idea of how do we upskill the incumbent workforce. We'll get into that in a minute. And then the other one is, how do we figure out how to automate in a small to mid-sized manufacturing operation? And that for somebody who's got their eye on, look, you're somebody running a 25, 50 member team, or even call it a sub $50 million company. Your biggest problem the day in the morning when you get up is not how am I going to automate my process a year from now. It's how am I going to keep orders coming out the door? How am I going to take care of my people? How am I going to make sure that quality remains stable? All these other challenges that we're working on, that's what you're getting up and figuring out. But if those companies miss the automation tidal wave that is coming at them and everybody else automates around them, I mean, they're not going to be in business. And is it really that critical? And that's why you're pushing this whole side of small to mid-sized businesses automating. Is that why it's so important?
It really is, because the cost competitiveness is going to continue to put pressure on those. I mean, those companies are going to continue to see cost pressures, and especially if their neighbors start to automate and they don't, those cost pressures are going to rapidly increase. So we see the need. The good thing is that what we do for a living is you were talking about your journey over the years and the differences. the acceptance of automation in the marketplace today is so much stronger, certainly than it was in the 90s and the 2000s when we really got into this
even
time.
5 years ago,
Right, or even 5 years ago. And so I think that acceptance level is so high that these companies are recognizing it and they see it. A lot of because of shows like this, the Automate Show, a lot because of government interaction and the government saying that manufacturing is important and that automation is also important. So all of those things combined.
And the Tech Ed podcast, by the way.
And the Tech Ed, is important. And tune in and listen.
Right, thank you.
First of all, I actually have to go back to that to say that if I'm the only third-time member that you had, and you've been doing it for 2.5 years, it's just going to touch on how many people you do actually know that you've done this for 2.5 years, and you haven't had to repeat too many times.
We're into it. I'm looking at Melissa, 112 marquee episodes, absolutely. So it's been a lot, and a lot of fascinating people, and what I love most about it is just the opportunity to meet just these incredible people that are changing the world. Automation is changing the world for the better, I believe, in so many ways. Manufacturing is safer. It's way more exciting. It's way better paying. There's a really, really bright future. So all kinds of reasons to be really, really excited about the future of manufacturing, and not just for the big OEMs. That's really important, but for the small to mid-sized businesses as well. And I agree with you. That is the biggest opportunity without question for automation, advanced manufacturing, IoT. Data analytics. I mean, all these things are going to be real in small and mid-sized businesses, and I'm really, really excited for that as well. It's been interesting. We're seeing more and more manufacturing coming back to the United States. I think that's a trend that's going to continue. I think it's almost undeniable, and we've had a number of our guests as we're here at Automate mention that same exact trend. We lived through this incredible supply chain disruption over the course of the last several years. I always say the silver lining is that now people who had no idea how important manufacturing was now have an understanding that without us, you don't get what you want when you want it at the price you want to pay landing on your door, the next morning from Amazon. So really, really important. I'd be curious kind of on a macroeconomic basis, Mike, as you're sitting on these panels, meeting with other, powerful, high-profile CEOs, having really deep conversations about, not just the American economy, but the global economy. What are some of the trends you're seeing from a supply chain standpoint, from an automation standpoint, as we it feels like we're out of the pandemic. We're here. Nobody's wearing a mask, and very few people anyway. So as we're on the back end of that, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. And it's an interesting point that you make about that supply chain. I think my family got so sick of me talking about why there was no toilet paper on the shelves. I start talking about how supply chain works, and they're like, yeah, but there's still no toilet paper. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand. And
just quickly interjecting, both of my kids know the 7 deadly wastes backwards and forwards.
There you go. Right.
The kind of world that they grew up in.
Right,
as well.
Exactly. So I embed that into their heads about supply chain because I lived through a bunch of the issues there. But we were talking earlier about off air about the supply chain, and what we saw going into the pandemic. Really, it was this wave of all these things that came together, a confluence of things coming together of that the pandemic, and because of what happened with the supply chain, lead times got longer. Right. That it was harder to get things because COVID put a clamp into that. But then because there was in short supply, it always happens when lead times get longer, people order more because there's a little bit of a panic buy. And then as lead times further get longer, because people order more, then lead times get out even further because the supply chain is still fairly clamped, then that even piles the orders on even more. Right. And so for a lot of the non-automotive customers, and some automotive, to be frank, the orders kept piling in over 2021 timeframe and into beginning a little bit into 2022. And what inevitably happens is, and FANUC has done an incredible job at our parent company in Japan in terms of mitigating many of these supply chain risks. And so we worked hard with our vendors and suppliers, and we increased capacity at our factories, both from producing CNC controls as well as producing robots and robo machines. And we kind of fixed a lot of the problems, and we were able to build up our inventory and do that.
When you're so vertically integrated, by the way, that it really allowed that flexibility to be able to make decisions without necessarily being curtailed by outside forces. Not completely, but I'm sure that mitigated a lot of it.
Oh, yeah. It was nice to talk to our chairman about that when he said, oh, yeah, well, we are the factory, so we just lean on ourselves to work harder or find more people and things like that. So, But what inevitably happens is that there's a difference between when you report new orders and then you report shipments. And so new orders really piled in quite a bit in the 2021 timeframe.
Sure.
Because of the long lead times and things like that. And so throughout 2022, on the non-automotive side, we did see a pretty significant drop-off in new orders, but our backlog was so intense during that time that we really spent the year really shipping and delivering on a lot of the orders that we had booked the year before.
Sure.
And then from a new order perspective, fortunately for the overall numbers, the automotive industry during that time really sunk their teeth in and started purchasing quite a bit of capital for a lot of the upcoming EV programs that are going on right now.
Yep.
So if you look at 2021 to 2022, the top line numbers look very similar,
right?
But it's a very two broadly different years where 2021 was a lot of pre-ordering for the non-automotive business, a little bit light on auto, and then 2022 was a little bit light on the auto or on the non-auto side and pretty heavy on the auto. So
yeah, absolutely. No, it was as we were going through it, and you know, I serve on several corporate boards and work on the leadership teams of a couple different companies, and we saw a couple things. The first one was that in some of the board work I do and talking to some of the other board members, they were having to take their engineers, their R&D engineers, their new product, their innovation engineers, off of innovation projects and actually put them on supply chain problems. So rather than, you know, I can't get a certain IC chip from, you know, what have you, the lead time is 18 months. I have demand right now. Let's design around that IC. And so they took a lot of their innovation talent off of that and put that talent onto fixing supply chain problems, which I said, particularly we'll see if it's still going to play out. There's been a couple articles in the Wall Street Journal that have said that that's a little bit of an issue, that we took people away from innovation. Now we have a little bit of a, backlog in the innovation work that we need to do in the R&D, So that was one of them. The second one was with all the panic buying, and we saw it in some of those companies with our supply base too. So we're panicking in trying to be disciplined and not over ordering and not shocking the supply chain, and not putting ourselves on the hook for a bunch of inventory that we can't use in the future. But the companies that maybe weren't quite that disciplined and are going out and just panic buying. I know I need 20, but what if I need 40? I'll buy 40 and I'll take the inventory risk. Well, now you're getting that order from somebody that may not necessarily at the time have an end user, and they're doing that basically with the hope, if you will, that order comes in. Well, now we're into the time where lead times are contracting a little bit. Inventory is a little bit more stable. The hope will be, and I think that's what the case will be, is that you get this huge swing where we bleed that inventory through the system. Companies like your revenue stays relatively stable at a high level while you're enjoying the benefit of those additional orders. And then by the time we get back to the end of that, both of those contract back to a normalcy where you can continue. You've got a lower lead time, you maintain higher levels of revenue, the orders start to come in to backfill, or not to backfill, but now because we have current demand, we filled the former current demand with inventory. Is that, and not without going into too much detail about things you can't share, is that how you're looking at it?
I mean, it's like you're teaching a macroeconomics class here, because that's exactly what has happened. And it's exactly what we're anticipating. That we did see a lot of the panic buy, and because of our customers' request, we did do a lot of ordering, which does build up inventory.
Right.
And now the good thing is that I'm still very bullish on automation overall.
For sure.
So. There's still supply chain challenges out there in the world, right? Like I said, FANUC has done a pretty good job fixing a lot of the issues that we've had, but there's still other challenges that are out there. And when it comes to delivering a solution to a customer, it's not just a robot. You need a robot and a bunch of other stuff as well.
Yep.
So we're still seeing some issues in terms of our system integrators and some of the solution providers being able to get systems off their floor because of still missing components and things like that. But as soon as that starts to work its way out, then I think it'll play out just the way it is that we have inventory that we're able to meet short delivery times. There's still extremely low unemployment rates, which means there's still a big labor problem in terms of being able to produce things. And even though the federal government has continued to raise interest rates, and we have seen that effect on our business, I mean, the work to curb inflation has affected people that are trying to borrow money right now and things like that. But for what we do for a living to help people produce things, we're still consuming a tremendous amount of stuff in America. And so I think that I'm pretty bullish on manufacturing and bullish on the automation side, that we're setting things up. And then obviously, as we've talked, we continue to invest in our company to try to do that.
That has been one of the most fascinating things that I've seen from an economic standpoint, is that consumer demand in this time of inflation, in this time of higher interest rates, the consumer is still buying.
Right.
And somebody needs to make whatever it is they're buying, and somebody needs to make that at a time where they can't find enough people to be able to necessarily produce that product. And so everybody's trying to automate. Now we've created another supply chain challenge, which is a supply chain challenge of people and skilled talent coming into manufacturing. I think one of the many blessings in my life, it seems like every month I'm crossing paths with you at one event or another. We were together in Rochester Hills about a month ago, had some time together in San Diego earlier in the year at the FANUC ASI conference. That's the conference, by the way, where all of your systems integrators get together, share best practices, learn about new products and so on. And I've been blessed to be part of that several times, most recently in February. And it was to a speaker. Every single speaker, you must have had 15 people get up on that stage. And it didn't matter whether it was an integrator, whether it was an end user, whether it was somebody that was they're advocating on behalf of the industry, one of your integrators, or any of these people. They're all talking about the incredible shortage of talent.
Right.
You're hearing that everywhere, aren't you?
It is. It's the number one thing. It's the number one thing I hear about, and then it turns out to be the number one thing I talk about.
Right.
I'm glad you asked me about the new technology in our booth, because a lot of times I start on that and I end up on workforce challenges very, very quickly. So yes, I think that is still what turns into the number one driver. And if you think about it, so the way you justify automation, a lot of times, by automating, you can make things faster. You can make things with higher quality. You can make things with less downtime, and potentially you can shift labor into other areas. And so when you look at a return on investment of how to automate, that's typically the equation that someone looks at.
Right.
How much faster? How many errors do I have that I can reduce improve quality and reduce faults and stuff? And then is there a reduction in labor that I can shift to some other part of the plant and be better productive? Well, what's happening now is that because there's a reduction in labor, there's this lost revenue component that's coming in where the entire line is down because there isn't enough operators to actually make it. And once you add that component to a payback where you lose, say a car company loses $1 million a minute, you know, the automation justification starts to justify pretty quickly. And so I see that every day, because when we talk about justification numbers, a lot of companies will come back and say, don't even worry about that because my plant's been down for 2 days because there's no people. So if I had that automation, it would have paid back already in the last 2 days of lost production.
Absolutely. In a prior life, I was actually a tier 1 supplier to automotive, and every one of our contracts had written into it was $250,000 an hour if you shut their line down. And people always ask me, would they really charge you for that? And we just say, I don't have any idea. Nobody's going to let it happen. So we'll never know for sure. But
that's why they put it in there.
Exactly. But that's exactly right. That's one of the great ways of justifying automation, is just in terms of the reduction in downtime. And we actually had that conversation with Lou Finazzo yesterday on the automotive side, and just the huge benefits that come from automating process. If we can find people, and if we can upskill people, you and I have talked a lot about the next generation, getting students in high schools, technical and community colleges into automation programs. FANUC is hands down the leader in that space. It isn't even close. 1,500 plus now under Paul Aiello's direction, and leadership, schools teaching the FANUC CERT program across the country, and it's making a difference. I mean, I can tell you that, and I know you asked too. I think just interject with your story about asking students when they visit FANUC.
Yeah, so we every time a new employee starts at FANUC, we host a monthly. I normally used to do it quarterly, but we're hiring so many people these days that I'm doing it monthly now. So we bring into the auditorium a group of new employees, and you got to imagine all the different types of employees we have at FANUC. We have people in finance, we have people in manufacturing and logistics and engineers, and people with PhDs, people with high school diplomas. So all sorts of different people. And every class that I talk to, and I talk to every single one, I teach them about our culture and about what the expectation of working at FANUC is, and why I think it's great, and why I think they should think it's great. But I've been asking the same questions for 2 years, and I ask everyone in the class whether anyone that in our incoming new employee class had ever experienced FANUC technology at the school level, whether they did it in high school, at a 2-year tech school, or at university. And I am now, whatever that is, 25 of 25 or 30 of 30 of people that touched a FANUC robot in the school system.
Awesome.
And so that's how I know that it's working, because the people that we're hiring are coming to our company because they learned about our things at a school level.
Absolutely. That's absolutely the power of FANUC CERT, working really well in the high schools, working well in our technical colleges. Talk about training and upskilling for the incumbent workforce.
Yeah, so, well, actually, before I get on to that, I do want to get a shout out that I'm very proud that after a number of years of working, I finally was able to convince my kids' actual school district to purchase 4 robots from us that they're going to use. I felt like at the end I'm like trading wampum beads or something like that to finally close the deal. But I was finally able to. So the Rochester Community School District here in Michigan now has robots.
Awesome.
So now my kids, my oldest son's graduating from high school this year, so he programmed enough robots at FANUC over the years. But now I'm really happy to say that here that we're doing that. But to the broader question, so thank you to Rochester Schools for doing that. But to the broader question, it's ever changing. This is what I really love about it, because you and I started off on this pathway a number of years ago to educate the workforce. And it needs to continue to evolve, and we've continued it. Every year that we do something like this or we work on a show together, you start to see more and more technologies. And so the stackable credentials that we have, starting with basics, and then we got into adding PLC with Rockwell into that, and IoT. Here,
CNC as well now.
Right. So now at the show here, we have a new partner in Bantam Tools that developed a kind of a micro CNC, which is amazing, that you can take a FANUC trainer CNC benchtop trainer and hook it up to their small CNC. And now we're actually cutting metal at the school level. So I was watching that, and I was watching some of the students back there work it, and I'm ever impressed with that.
They're going to join us tomorrow, by the way. Joel Baldy and some folks from Bantam are going to be with us.
That's great. Great product that you can find on our website, or I'm sure on your website, that we're going to start repping through the network as well. So, but I think we have to continue to think about what's next. One of the areas that I want to continue to focus on is certainly working with our involvement in the government. You were talking earlier about all that. You have many more government contacts than I
doubt
do.
that, but together we're trying to make a difference, right?
So, and that's an ongoing challenge too, because government's always changing. People are always changing in and out of office, but it's one of those necessary things that we have to keep pressure on our government to make sure that they recognize the importance of what we're doing.
Right, absolutely. So obviously investing in the next generation of workforce, investing in relationships with government officials, public policymakers, also investing in physical space and real estate, right? When we were together in Rochester Hills, you were talking about this just incredible expansion. I drove by at the hotel, the expansion spaces between the hotel I was staying in and between your headquarters. So drove by it several times. Talk a little bit about, just the scale of what you're doing there is almost impossible to wrap your brain around as far as growth is concerned.
What we need to do to continue to grow and meet our customers' needs is kind of ongoing. And just for those people listening that haven't ever been to FANUC before, number one, please come and see us.
For sure.
And number two, so we do a number of different things at our headquarter building or on our campus in Rochester Hills, Michigan. We have our headquarter building, and then many people don't know this, but we actually manufacture painting robots in that building itself. So
and the only manufacturer of robots to manufacture in the U.S., right?
In the U.S., that's right. We're the only one manufacturing in the U.S. So we manufacture the global supply of painting robots here. Our largest export is to China, so we're exporting from the U.S. to China for painting robots.
The trade gap at least a little bit,
a
right?
Little bit. We're trying to do our best there. And then we have another large facility to the north of us that we call our North Campus, where we house a bunch of inventory, and we do a number of different retrofits. And then also within our headquarter building, we have a big training center. So working with you and all of our great partners on the workforce development side, your responsibility is to put robots in technology and education institutions. Right. And then we take the responsibility of training our customers and people that are outside the education system that we train on FANUC as well, with a very similar credential that we train at the school system. So we have currently 13 classrooms within our facility. We train at 20 of our other facilities, but it's an ongoing need to continue to train. Sure. So that's kind of was a challenge that we have sitting in the background. And then we have an ongoing challenge in terms of space, that the amount of business that we're doing continues to grow. And so we're on a hunt to expand. And we looked everywhere. We looked everywhere for land, and we needed a lot.
Right.
Because we wanted to build a facility that was 650,000 square feet.
That is crazy.
A new facility.
Yeah.
For those to put that in perspective, it's the size of the largest Amazon distribution center, the fulfillment center.
That's incredible.
So if those of you that have seen an Amazon fulfillment center in your neighborhood, that's kind of the scope and size of the building we're talking about here. And it's amazing when you kind of check all the boxes all at once. So we were looking around for space, and then it came about us that less than a mile from our headquarter building, a former law school went out of business, and they closed the doors on that, and they were trying to sell that building.
Okay.
It's a 120,000 square foot school, former law school.
Sure.
But fortunately, it had like 40 acres of land in the front of it.
Yeah.
And so it was like win-win. So we bought the law school. We worked with the federal government actually to change the way the land looked in the front, and we were able to build our 650,000 square foot building. And now we own a school, an actual proper school.
Love it.
And so big picture wise, the building's going to be completed around the spring of next year.
Yep.
We're going to start shifting a lot of our things where we're going to move the painting production into another building. We're going to shift all the retrofits into this new building. We're going to have a lot more lab space in the headquarter building. And then eventually we're going to shift all of our education programs into the school and be able to expand that really by multiple times for what we have today.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, you think about, I'm sure you have friends that are lawyers. I have friends that are lawyers, and, you can tell them now, I didn't go to law school, but I actually bought one.
Yeah, that's right.
Have you bought a law school? That's just such a great story. And physically, just the proximity to your campus.
Right.
And it was almost like, a wish come true. It's just absolutely perfect.
Yeah. I mean, when we started looking, we looked at a number of different sites, and we just started getting further and further away, and we started thinking about the impact on our business and the culture of the business, right? So the two buildings we have today, we can walk between them. They're not connected, but we can walk between. But so this is a short drive, but it's really close by. So
yeah, absolutely. So
super excited about it.
Totally exciting, and it is. You and I were talking during the warm up. I mean, the biggest challenge. It just is the biggest challenge as we're going out and talking to manufacturers is how do I upskill? A lot of these folks are already people that have deployed FANUC robots and are just want to get their people trained. It's a huge part of your business already, and I know there's a lot of, when you talk about bottlenecks in manufacturing, we've got bottlenecks in training the incumbent workforce as well, not just the people coming from our high schools and technical colleges, but people already in the workforce, and this is going to help solve for that as well. So really, really exciting times at FANUC. Any other things you have going on these days, Mike, that our audience should be aware of? Any expansion opportunities you want to announce here on the Tech Ed podcast?
Yeah, that's a pretty big one.
New products, technologies. Yeah,
that's a big one. That the new building's a pretty big one. I'll tell you, FANUC continues to expand. I was able to host last week. We had a big open house in Japan.
Yep.
We hosted about 100 customers came with us. You've made that journey with us 2 times now. And on that trip, we were able to see a number of FANUC expansions in their plants. We were able to tour the robot factory where we continue to expand the robots, building other robots.
Right, I love that.
And fortunately, FANUC has, as we talked about earlier with supply chain, FANUC has been able to grow to meet the customer's needs as well. And we were able to explore that with some of our customers there about how they have refined the manufacturing process to really get more out of some of the same space, and then improve our space management to be able to get more out of some of the existing areas that we have. And then we continue to announce things in terms of expansion there in Japan. So awesome. FANUC continues to be a great parent company and supportive of our business. And we're hosting a number of visitors from FANUC Japan this week as well, which has been great. So, so all in all, things are on the up, and I'm really, really bullish and excited about the future. And coming to a show like this, I'll tell you, just again on the Automate side, being at a show like this, seeing a bunch of my friends, yourself included,
thank you.
And it just energizes you so much.
Yep.
And I can tell you that I needed some energy because I was coming off a Japan trip and jet lag. And then I got here at 5 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning to meet a news crew. Right. And so you're running a little low on energy, and you're on your second cup of coffee, and then you start to see all the people come in. And boy, I didn't even think about being tired. I'm like you said in the beginning, we're on day 3, and I could do this all week. It's great.
So much energy. And the other thing that's interesting to me is a lot of time at these shows, and you do a lot of them, I do as well, the energy wanes a little bit as the show goes on. And it has been like just full on all 3 days. And I know tomorrow's going to be exactly the same. Workforce Day. Hundreds of students are going to be walking through the aisles and looking at these crazy, incredible new opportunities in terms of workforce and career choices for them. Amazing technologies. It's such a great time to be in this business. And as you've heard me say many times, I don't know what I did in my prior life to be fortunate enough to be partnered with people like you and Paul and just the amazing people at FANUC. But it's truly a blessing to work with you. It's always fun to have you back on the podcast. Always a new story. Incredibly innovative company and just so excited for the future. So, Mike, we thank you for being the first third-time guest.
Sounds good.
And I guarantee you there will be a fourth time, and we look forward to catching up the next time. But thanks for being with us here today on the Tech Ed Podcast.
I really appreciate it, and our partnership and friendship together as well. I can tell you 1,000,000% that FANUC wouldn't be able to grow as much as we have and invest as much as we have without our partnership together, because what you are doing is really helping and saving what we're working towards. So I appreciate it.
That comment means the world to me, as does our time together. So thanks, Mike, again so much for being with us.
All right, Matt. Thanks.